Rachel. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning for the third program in the Bar Association's Professionalism Committee's virtual wellness series. We've had two great programs thus far, and we're excited for today's program presented by Christine Woods. Real quick, we'll have three more programs this Thursday and next Thursday. April Luby will be presenting on work from home ergonomics and stretching for stress relief, respectively. On Tuesday, May 26th, Heather Gentry will guide a flow strengthen yoga session that is fit for all skill levels. All these programs are free, but registration is required, and the flyers are available through the Bar Association's website and various social media outlets. And before I introduce Christine, I want to remind you that everybody's going to be muted throughout the presentation. If you have a question, just put it in the chat box, and Christine will get to those at the end, or just hold your question until the end when we can unmute people, and you can ask it then. As Rachel mentioned, the program is going to be recorded and will be available through the Bar Association at a later time. So with that, I'm very pleased to introduce Christine Woods, who's going to speak on the topic of stress eating strategies to help put you back in the driver's seat when life throws you off course. As a little background about Christine, she has a master's in education and is a clinical exercise physiologist, nutrition coach, personal trainer, and group exercise instructor. Christine is also a master instructor for the National Academy of Sports Medicine and the Athletics and Fitness Association of America, and presents on nutrition and wellness seminars and workshops nationally. She offers nutrition coaching, one-on-one personal training, and group exercise classes through her company, Christine Woods Fitness, LLC. And she has been helping clients achieve their health and fitness-related goals for over 20 years. So we're very fortunate to have a nationally recognized speaker joining us today. And so without further ado, I will pass the virtual microphone on to Christine.
Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate it. And thank you all for having me on today. I'm looking forward to this. So with regard to stress eating, I think we can all agree this is an unusual time, a stressful time, an uncertain time, and not to mention we are home more where the food is right there and available. And we've all experienced comfort in food before, right? So we know that, reaching for food is going to bring us some feelings of comfort that we're probably looking for right now. So the problem, few indulgences here and there, not a big deal. It's just when this becomes a regular cycle, that's when it becomes a problem. So the stress eating cycle, what does that look like? It's a three-part process. You have your trigger, right? You have your emotional trigger, which is stress. And then what does that lead to? That leads to some routine, the routine being eating. And stress eating, what are the foods that we're reaching for? It's usually the high sugar, high fat, highly processed carbohydrates, right? Those are the ones that we're reaching for. And there's a reason that those are the ones that we're reaching for. Those are the ones that actually, they reach our bloodstream more quickly, right? And so they give us a feel-good feeling almost immediately. So it's not like what I preach in terms of healthy eating, right? Those foods that metabolize slowly and give you that even blood sugar level. No, these are foods that produce a spike in blood sugar. We feel good and then we fall, right? So that's the cycle. And the problem is that it does become a cycle. It becomes a cycle that we repeat time and time again, because again, we fall from those feel-good feelings. We haven't actually addressed the source of the stress. And so with that unresolved, we just kind of seek to feel good again and again. And so the way the brain works, and the way the brain works in response to habits or building habits, is very similar. So we know that the brain is not hardwired, right? The brain has almost plastic circuitry. So new circuits in our brain can be created at any given time, and they can be created through repetition, through cycles. And this is regardless of whether it's a good habit or a bad habit. So, when I'm working with a client, for example, it's all about, in order to establish healthy habits, it's all about identifying those single small actions that can be repeated time and time again, so that eventually they become habit, right? And so that's what happens with a negative habit like stress eating. It's the same exact thing. We're repeating, you're getting reinforcement from the reward, and it does just become this vicious cycle. And as we know, overconsumption leads to a lot of health issues such as, obesity, high blood pressure, hypertension, all of these things that we want to control. So then the question is, all right, so how do we undo this cycle? And so we have to kind of take it apart, and it starts with becoming more aware. Is it an emotional issue? Maybe it's not even an emotional issue. Maybe it's just we're not fueling well in the first place, and we are actually becoming hunger. We are actually getting hungry, right? And then overeating. But so we have to become aware. We have to really look at what's going on. And then after awareness, then we can kind of develop a behavioral plan. So it's a cognitive and a behavioral approach that we have to take in order to break out of this cycle. So let's start with, again, the first step just being awareness. And like Suzanne and I were discussing, you should or will be receiving a worksheet that I've created and developed, and it's regarding awareness of eating behaviors. And so again, when you are looking to change the way you're eating, you have to dive into it and see, why am I doing this? Is it related to emotions? Am I noticing that, I tend to eat more every time my husband and I sit down and have a discussion about finances? Am I eating more after I get off the phone, with my mother? Am I eating more because, it's 2 hours after breakfast and maybe I didn't really fuel well for that breakfast meal? So point being, you have to really figure out what isn't working first before we can actually solve the problem with strategies. So like I said, you first have to assess, okay? And then after you've assessed and hopefully recognized, accepted what needs to be fixed or changed, right? Then we can go into what are those behavioral approaches that will help. So that's really what I want to hopefully talk about most, because I think we're all looking for some strategies, right? Because like I said, we're just eating more, and I see it in myself, I see it in my family. So I'm working on this in my own home as well. So like I said, first thing you want to do is really assess and figure out the problem. Then the strategies. Let's talk about different strategies that hopefully will be helpful. And let's start with just some simple ones, such as adding a little bit more structure to the day and thinking about food as, something that should be consumed with purpose for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? As having 3 main meals and really not eating outside of those 3 meals. And again, I'm just putting up a variety of strategies because you never know what's going to work for one person versus another. So I do think having a little bit more structure in place can be helpful for some. So just think of eliminating the snacking, and you have these specific windows of times when eating is acceptable. Okay, so think about just sticking with 3 meals. Do make sure, again, just do make sure you are getting plenty of exercise, simply because exercise is going to help with, feelings of anxiety. I mean, that's a proven thing. And if you can work on just diminishing that stress response, that fight or flight response that is so prevalent right now, you are going to be less likely to, grab those salty, sweet, fatty foods that I mentioned earlier. So do make sure that you are exercising regularly. Let's talk about sleep, because sleep is one of those underrated but absolutely vital components to our overall well-being. And without sleep, you are not able to effectively regulate your appetite hormones. So you have 2 main hormones that are involved in appetite management. So you have this one called ghrelin and another called leptin. And excuse me, and ghrelin is one that I just think of it as G and G. Ghrelin makes you go, it makes you go eat. And so when you are sleep deprived, your ghrelin goes up, your leptin goes down, and you are feeling much more hungry, and you tend to eat more than you should because your hunger hormones are not in check. So sleep is absolutely vital. In terms of sleep recommendations, we recommend, excuse me, anywhere between 7 and 9 hours is the typical window. But again, that's variable on the individual. But sleep is vital in maintaining hormonal balance. With regard to, this is another approach, again, based on science and evidence, but overeating does tend to elicit this negative cycle of, you overeat, and while you do feel good for a moment, then you crash and you feel guilty about your eating episodes. And research has actually found that cycle of negative self-talk, it does actually increase. There's a dopamine reaction. If you know anything about dopamine is involved in addiction pathways and habit formation. And believe it or not, there is this dopamine surge when you engage in this kind of negative self-talk, which just perpetuates a negative cycle of overeating. So the idea of disrupting, and again, if you haven't read into much of like mindfulness and mindful approaches, it sounds kind of funny, but you can actually disrupt this thought pattern or this cycle when you do act in a more compassionate way towards yourself. So when you don't beat yourself up and say, can't believe you did that again, when you've overeaten and perhaps don't feel well after you've overeaten, if you aren't judgmental and are more compassionate, you are more likely to disrupt that negative cycle of overeating. Other things to think about, just think about the trigger. And probably a lot of us are, since we are in our homes a lot more now, we are doing things like working at the kitchen table because the kids are doing their homework at the kitchen table and you have to be close by. And like, I feel like I have to be on the same floor as my kids at all times right now, because the Schoology website isn't working right, and you know, all of these things. So we're all right there together. And so again, if you're right there in the kitchen, it's just there, right? It's a trigger. So working with your environment, and that stems, you know, not just removing yourself from the environment, but that also, you know, means setting up your environment in a more successful way. So at the beginning of this whole thing, I was actually grocery shopping, and I was like, oh, this is bad. I was actually buying probably more junk food just to keep everybody a little more happy. But you know, I've done, that's hasn't been a good move. I recognize that. But so what I'm saying is, again, you know, set your environment up for success so that you're not tempted so much. Get yourselves out of the kitchen, get the junk food out of the house, so you're less likely to overeat. So control your triggers. This is another one. So think in terms of with food prep, and I don't know about you, but I feel like I am cooking. I'm cooking all the time now. I'm like cooking, food prepping 24/7. At least that's how I feel. But I'm definitely more aware of just making sure the meals I am preparing are like fully supportive meals. And what I mean by that is, again, when you're not getting the right foods in your body, right? We talked about how the appetite hormones are thrown off. And again, you're getting these spikes in blood sugar, all of that. You need to make sure that your food prep and your meals are balanced in terms of the macronutrients. So I'm talking about your protein, fat, and carbs. Those are the three macronutrients that are the most important. And every time you eat, whether it be snack or meal, you do always want to get a balance of those macronutrients. Protein is what is necessary if you are going to feel satiated. Again, the carbohydrate isn't going to do that to you. Fat is going to do that for you, but fat packs a much higher calorie punch than your protein or your carbs. So point being, when I'm making meals now, I am making sure there is a protein component. And again, this is regardless whether you're you know, more plant-based or you're consuming meat, you know, whatever the case may be, you need to make sure you're incorporating a decent amount of protein, because it will make you feel satiated. It will help maintain blood glucose levels, and it will have you feeling better longer. So you are absolutely less likely to snack and binge if you are fueling properly. And in my opinion, that's most important, at least in my home, for the nighttime meal, because I just noticed that like dinner can be served and literally less than an hour later, someone will grab a snack. And so, however, I do notice when I am providing something that has a much higher protein component, that is less likely to happen. So again, I'm being very conscious of the foods I'm preparing. I'm making sure that I have prepared them in bulk so that there is plenty to have for leftovers, to have for lunch the next day, so that people aren't scrambling when they're hungry and making bad choices. So I think that's one of the best things that I can encourage people to do. Be really conscious of the meals you're preparing and prepare enough so that it lasts. The worst thing you can do is find yourself hungry with nothing nutritionally dense to eat. That's when it all goes to crap. Okay, and then I should also mention, you know, as we're talking about nutrient dense foods, let's just real quick touch on alcohol and how in addition to overeating, alcohol consumption, that seems to be on the rise as well. And I think we all probably recognize that the nutritional value of alcohol is slim to none. So it's definitely not on my menu of nourishing meals, nor should it be on yours. So so the other thing about alcohol is just that, and as we're talking about overeating and the ultimate health effects that can come from overeating, over-consuming with alcohol also is going to produce weight gain. And what happens is when your body's metabolizing alcohol, it's just not viewed as a food. That's really, without us getting deep into it, that's all you really need to know. When you ingest alcohol, I mean, your body only recognizes proteins, fats, and carbs. Those are your 3 macronutrients that we just talked about. Alcohol is not one of them. And even though you might say alcohol is a carb, alcohol is a sugar, it's not recognized as that. It's recognized as a toxin when your body takes it in. And what does your body do? Its immediate response is to get rid of that toxin. So it gets metabolized first, but what does that mean for the rest of your body? That means that your body isn't going to burn anything while it's metabolizing alcohol. So your body may not even turn to fat burning. And mind you, fat burning is typically what would happen in the evening, actually, during sleep. Your body does tend to burn more fat, but that gets completely halted and you won't burn any fat depending on how much alcohol you've consumed, because that takes top priority. And so, of course, the other things that happen with excess alcohol consumption, you delay the fat burning, but you're getting twice as many calories. When you talked about the calorie punch of different macronutrients, but again, your carbs and your proteins, 4 grams, but the alcohol consumption, you're getting almost double the calorie content per gram with alcohol versus carbs or proteins. So it's highly calorie dense. And then not to mention it reduces inhibitions and you tend to eat, other junky food in coordination with it. So that's just a little bit about alcohol. But finally, in terms of strategies, I would say, think about your body in a holistic way right now. And your body, we're craving so many things. We're undernourished, not necessarily from food, but we're undernourished in terms of like we're not getting the social contact, the emotional connection, perhaps the spiritual well-being that we're accustomed to getting regularly right now. And so, again, we are turning to food to fill this emotional void. So, think about other things that you can do right now before food, disrupt the pattern. So before you reach for the food, think about what else would just make me feel better. And try to do, and again, think of something easy, think of something that you can do where you are seated in your home. What could you do that would make you feel better? And maybe that's just doing some light movement or some stretching. Maybe it is going outside for a walk and getting some sunshine. Maybe it's listening to your favorite song and just, plugging in by yourself and listening to maybe it's singing a song. So, but whatever it is, figure out something. And then other strategies like that might actually fill you up, right, and prevent you from eating is just drinking 3 glasses of water, right? Or maybe not 3 if that's too much. Dial back 1 or 2. Just taking some deep breaths. And again, you might not be a regular meditator. That might be kind of outside your comfort zone, but the act of sitting, breathing in a quiet space, and maybe that's just going out in your car. I've done that. Going out in your car and just being by yourself. We all need a little alone time right now. And we can't get away. So just being by yourself, breathing deeply, you know, counting, deep breath in for 2, exhale out for 4, really extending the exhale. But it helps calm your sympathetic nervous system. And again, you know, we are feeling the effects of stress. We are in this fight or flight, high alert sensation right now, and doing activities like that. Deep breathing is just a simple one, but it does what we say, it conjures up this parasympathetic dominance, meaning it just calms you down. Rather you being sympathetically dominated, heart rate revved, blood pressure high, you know, it calms you and it brings you down. So, you know, there's nothing, as I kind of try to wrap up my thoughts a little bit, plenty of strategies. You have to figure out what works for you. You have to figure out the ultimate source of the problem and why you are turning for food. And like I said, it might not be an emotional reaction at all. You might physically be hungry, but that's something you need to figure out. And if you are hungry, you need to figure out why you are hungry and how you could do things differently, right? We need to figure out the source of the problem and then come up with behavioral strategies that work. But hunger, you know, appetite, none of that is bad. In fact, hunger and appetite mean your body is performing the way it should. We want to, it's a sign of metabolism, right? Your body is utilizing its fuels and telling you, you know, it needs more. So it's not that that's an issue, but when we start trying to, you know, stifle our emotions through the use of food, that becomes an issue, and that becomes a cycle that can be very hard to break out of. So, like I said, I hope you will, when you get the worksheet, if nothing else, again, you know, maybe you might feel like you don't really need to take the mindful approach, but look at it as you are, you know, a scientist doing your own experiment on yourself. And, you know, I don't know, I think it's cool to learn things about myself, but that's what you want to do. You want to, it's self-exploratory. You might learn something new, you might figure something out, something may just click, you may have an aha moment, and the chance to kind of do things a little bit differently. And I think that's about where I would conclude. So I am happy to, and I don't know how exactly we do this, if I should just go on to the chat or if we unmute people at this point. I don't know how we want to do it, but I am happy to okay. So I'm looking at the chat. Okay, so keep it out of the house. Yeah, but in terms of tempting foods, keep it out of the house. It's not really addressing the underlying challenge, because when I relent and the food is right. So the worst thing you can do is rely on willpower. So willpower doesn't work. So so it is best if it's just too hard, right? So don't do something that's going to force you to rely on willpower. Keep it out of the house. Find other ways to address other ways to address the stress, right? Yes, this is a great question. Is there something healthy you can eat at 9 p.m. to relieve hunger? So let's just talk about nighttime eating, because especially, I don't know about you, but our nighttime eating, that's probably where a lot of us stray. And I don't know, I have young children. We tend to eat on the earlier side, which again kind of makes things by 8 o'clock. If we eat at 5:30, people are hungry. So like I was talking about, your body wants to burn fat during the night. That's really what your body wants to. If you think of how your body taps into energy sources, your body uses carbohydrate for immediate energy needs. Okay, so when you're doing activities that are short duration, the fuel source is carbohydrate because it's processed quickly and provides an immediate energy source. And I always, because of my background, I always think about, sports events. Now, if you're thinking about the long duration, the marathon runner, he or she is going to tap into more fat. It's an endless supply. The activity lasts longer, the breakdown process of fat. So for many reasons, carbohydrates are what we do when we initially need energy, but for the long-term sustained activity, fat is what we're tapping into. Sleep is like a marathon. So, but point being, you want to tap into fat when you sleep. When you eat carbohydrate right before bed, you're putting the brakes on what your body naturally wants to do. And your body thinks, well, I need to work on the carbohydrate first. And so you delay the fat burning process. So the best thing you can do for yourself after your nighttime or dinner time meal is not eat carbohydrate based snacks from that time forward. You really want to eat something that's predominantly protein based and perhaps fat, but going much less so on the carb. So, what does that look like? I'm just going to say, so for example, I am a big supplementation. People feel very differently about supplementation, and that's all well and good. Supplementation, and for me personally, that's usually shakes that I'll have as a go-to because I know it's way better than junk. And actually, depending on what you buy, it can be something that's, nutritionally dense. So you want to find something, and I'll just mix up a shake right before I go to bed. And that's something that, again, is going to be high protein, low on the carbs, and have healthy fats in it. So I'm going to feel good going to bed. I'm going to continue to burn fat during the night. Whole foods can do the same thing. Supplementation, however, you can get more vitamins in a supplemented shake usually than you can in a few almonds before bed or some cottage cheese before bed. Not to say that there's nothing wrong with those options, because those are good, but so some celery, some almonds, some nut butter, carrots and hummus, mozzarella stick with some deli meat. Those are some protein fat options. And those will make you feel better through the night, and you continue to burn fat like your body really wants to. Okay, best time to exercise. Is it true that if you exercise at night, you cannot sleep? So that's very individual, but yes, that can be very, very difficult because it does disrupt cortisol levels in your body. And so there is a physiological basis for that statement that you shouldn't exercise late at night. And it's funny because it was literally a few months ago when we were still exercising in the gym, and my husband had just come back from the gym after doing a leg workout, heavy legs. It was heavy leg day. And he had just gotten home and he could not sleep for the life of him that evening. And it is true. It's the exercise, cortisol levels is going to make sleep more challenging for a lot of people if you exercise right before bed. So you just have to know kind of how your body reacts to evening exercise. Let's see, a fasting regimen. Okay. So fasting, so that's a very individual thing. And there's a lot of evidence behind fasting and the health benefits, and we know weight loss can be achieved with fasting. I think I wouldn't say anything against it. I would say that, it can be a challenging approach, but it's also an approach that's found to work. I try to always start with a client by dialing back on portion sizes, regular eating. That is how I first approach things, but everybody's different, and everybody, especially if you're looking for weight loss, that's a very complex process in itself. So fasting can be a solution. Fasting is very difficult if you are a highly active person. And so again, just be very mindful of fasting. Fasting should not be happening on, exercise days, or you should be mindful of the amount of exercise that you're going to do on a fasting day, because typically a fasting day is an undernourished day. So it just has to be done with some caution and some planning. Okay. So with regard to portion sizes, if we're talking about say 3 meals throughout the 3 square meals, right? A breakfast, lunch, and a dinner. And I'm gonna make things very simple. So you can kind of look at your hand as a portion guide, and generally speaking, very generally speaking, men, depending on the build, the size, the stature of the person. So often men will consume almost twice as much as a woman. Again, this is it's really more individualized like that. I almost don't know if I should go down this road. But so when you're looking at portions, think of your palm of your hand as a portion. So palm of your hand is a serving of protein, similar to like a deck of cards. This is like a 3 to 4 ounce serving of protein. So often I will start a woman, looking at her palm and figuring out, well, what is your lean protein source going to be? And it should be the size of a palm, and that should be on your plate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Men should have 2 palms of protein for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so, of course, we also want to have servings of fibrous carbs or healthy carbs, and perhaps a little bit of starchy carb. That is starchy carbs are your pastas, your grains. Your fibrous carbs are, of course, your dark green leafy vegetables, which you can pretty much eat in endless amounts. Your starchy carbs, you cannot eat in endless amounts. And especially as we grow older, you will see your body change, and your tolerance of starchy carbohydrates changes. The way your body utilizes that changes, and it has to be reduced. People don't like to hear that. But the fact of the matter is, starchy carbs, do tend to lead to increased fat deposition over the years. So we have to monitor that. So it really does become making sure you're getting the right amount of protein to feel satiated, and getting starchy carbohydrates, fibrous carbohydrates, and getting some fruit, foods that are nutritionally dense and that will fuel you, and finding the right portions and balance. Okay. Okay. So, yeah. old people have to be more careful. It's just, our diets have to change. Yeah, our diets really do have to change as we get older. It's just the truth. And with regard to, you know, other solutions, so, you know, is peanut butter on a banana a good or bad choice for a nighttime snack? Is whole grain bread, you know, with peanut butter a good choice for a snack? So I'm glad. So half a banana, you know, think about portion sizes, and like a whole banana, too much sugar in a serving. Yeah, you want to think in terms of dialing back, but just remember, bananas, breads, those are starches. So you're better off finding something that's more fibrous if you want to do a carb. So stick with something your celery. What would be a better choice than banana and peanut butter? Celery and peanut butter. So that would be a better choice. Any other questions? I think I answered the questions in the chat.
Christine, I think you did a wonderful job. Very enlightening, very informative and educational, so thank you.
You're very welcome.
If there aren't any other questions, we can wrap things up.
Good.
No, thank you so much, Christine.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right, and we'll send the worksheet to everyone.
Perfect.
Thank you, Christine.
Perfect.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Take care.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.